Well, OnlyFans model Courtney Clenny was arrested in Hawaii, where she reportedly was rehabilitating from drug and alcohol abuse problems. And of course, for stabbing her boyfriend and dealing with that murder. So that's the question. Was it murder or was it self defense? And will this social media influencer lean on Florida's stand your ground legislation to get away with murder? Well, hey, folks, thanks for joining Profiling Evil for this crime recap. Social media influencer Courtney Clenny is facing murder charges in Florida. The social media icon, at least in some circles, also went by the name of Courtney Taylor on Instagram. Clenny fatally stabbed her boyfriend in her Miami apartment back in April, and now this 26-year-old's been arrested, and investigators are extraditing her back to Florida where she'll face charges. She's sitting in Hawaii right now, where she is in rehabilitation for substance abuse and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her attorney is, quote, completely shocked, close quote, by the charges, stating his client was cooperating with the investigation. The attorney also said that they're looking forward to clearing Clenny's name in court, something that I think is going to be a tall order if the arrest affidavit is accurate. So let's dig into the actual facts of this case and see what happened and what evidence Clenny's going to have to overcome in her self-defense claim. To do this, I'm going to dive into the August 4th arrest warrant. Hey, and by the way, did you catch this? I'm wearing the new Profiling Evil t-shirt, and you might want to check this out. We're going to be putting it up in the merch store pretty soon, but I love the back of it. Here it says, see, say, and hear no evil. I hope you'll check out the t-shirt and pick it up. We love having your support. Well, the first part of the warrant identifies the judge who signed the warrant and, of course, includes Clenny's personal information. I used that information, and I also went back and searched my favorite program, Truth Finder, for any other publicly available information that there was on her, including locations where she's lived, any traffic or criminal offenses she's had, social media accounts, licenses, her assets and finances, and so much more. Truth Finder is a cool tool if you're trying to figure out something about that new person in your life. And if you're interested, just check out our link below. You'll get a discount by going and using and subscribing there. You can cancel your subscription at any time, but just know we get a little bit of a commission if you do sign up. It's about enough for me to buy a Diet Dr. Pepper. Now, this affidavit was sworn to by a detective with the city of Miami. Affidavits can be really challenging documents to write. I wrote a bunch of them in my career. They need to be legally sufficient. They need to be organized. They have to be easy to read, and they have to be understandable. In my opinion, the best affidavits actually are even interesting to read. And this one, it was pretty darn interesting to read. Arrest affidavits have to have enough information in them to satisfy the court that a law has been broken, that there's probable cause for the arrest, and that the detective swearing to, or they call it affirming, the information is true and correct. That means they got to put their own name on the line. And I could tell you from personal experience, I never went for a warrant that I didn't believe the facts were true, and that the person that I was seeking or the evidence that I wanted to pick up wasn't necessary to bring the criminal case to a close. Now, it's pretty troubling to people at times that the affidavits can and usually do contain hearsay information. The more stringent rules of evidence don't apply, and this kind of supportive information strengthens the request. The affidavits have to include the criminal statute involved. In this case, second-degree murder with a weapon. It's an incredibly serious charge. The document also includes the affiant's name, their title, the experience they have, and their jurisdictional authority. the training they've had and knowledge that they've got relevant to investigating this type of crime. It includes the law that was broken, and it includes that the person seeking the affidavit has to state what they want. In this case, they want custody of Courtney Clenny for the purpose of prosecution. Then the officer handling the case identifies the reason for the request and provides an overview of the case or a summary of the case. The affidavit establishes probable cause to believe that the crime occurred, and it includes a really limited presentation of the facts, just enough to get it through the court. Now, this can frustrate us from time to time because it only provides the information necessary to get the arrest warrant. But the more information that's included, the greater the chance the court will sign off on the warrant. Facts have to be attributed to their source so that the court can determine the credibility of the information. In short, the important thing to remember is that it is a limited document. It gives the court the assurance that probable cause exists and gives the officer the authority to pick up an individual or evidence. The best affidavits are those that are concise and interesting. This document didn't let me down, so let's look at it a little more closely. The warrant clearly points to Clenny as the suspect in the death of Christian Abuseli. The investigator swears in his professional opinion that Courtney Clenny did commit the act of murder in the second degree with a weapon, a violation of Florida law. The weapon is clearly identified as a knife. Now, the warrant lays out response by Miami Police and Miami Fire Rescue at the One Paraíso residences. Upon their arrival on April 3rd, 2022, they found Courtney Clenny cradling a man in her lap who was suffering from an apparent stab wound to the chest. Police took Clenny into custody while fire personnel rendered first aid to the man who was identified as Abuseli. The victim was transported to a nearby hospital, but it was there that he was pronounced dead. I appeared on Court TV with Vinnie Politan this week to talk about this case and Clenny's arrest. Vinnie shared a video that he obtained from TMZ of Clenny just moments after first responders arrived. He asked me about my concerns with the evidence, and I was really bothered by this dang dog wandering around, and frankly, the way the crime scene was being controlled. But listen into this.
But it's domestic violence. It's domestic violence. It's either domestic violence one way or the other, depending upon whose argument you're going to believe here. Either she's the victim defending herself or she is the perpetrator of domestic violence. At the end of the day, we know he is the one who is no longer alive. And there the dog is licking, it appears, her face and perhaps some of the blood off of her. Bizarre situation. That's from TMZ right afterwards. So I want to bring in some investigators tonight. Joining us in Salt Lake City, Utah, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King is with us. In San Diego, California, retired director of the San Diego Police Department Crime Lab, Jennifer Shen, is with us. And in New York, former New York City Assistant Commissioner, former NYP Sergeant Special Assignment, Dr. Keith Taylor. Great to see everyone tonight. I want to get your reactions to that video we just saw, and I want to play it again. Again, this is from TMZ. Mike, I'll start with you from your perspective as you see her in that apartment with the blood on her. Police are there. What are your concerns for investigators and for just the whole scene here?
I first am concerned that this dog is still wandering around and having access to go over and lick off what could be, other evidence. I'm a little bit troubled by the fact that the location of the blood just happens to be, from what I can see, Vinny, down at the lower extremities of her body. And so if in fact they were standing when this fight occurred, the information from the medical examiner is that there was a forceful downward thrust in order to create that wound. Was this guy sitting down? Was he sitting on a bed? Was he laying down? It's going to be really important in this case to figure out where that knife originated, where that actual murder occurred, and where the bodies ended up and where she ended up. And that's going to explain how that blood got on her legs. but I'm wondering, especially with an arterial tear, why there's not more on her upper body.
Now,
Clenny was then taken to the Miami Police Department, where she was advised of her rights per the Miranda warning and questioned. The interview was video and audio recorded. Now, the timeline in the case is really interesting, and I talked with Court TV a little bit about some of the more pertinent moments, in my opinion. Listen into that piece.
Mike King, what are your thoughts about the way this played out, minute by minute?
Yeah, the timeline gets really interesting, doesn't it, as we think about the behavior that's going on. Where was he before this? Is he returning home? And is there a fight that's already been happening? So it's going to be important to see their text messages and see what's going on. It's so interesting, especially in this social media world, how somebody, if in fact this was something planned, how she can go from posting a video to committing homicide. And domestic violence cycles are so difficult to understand when we think about why does somebody, if there is a situation that's caustic like this, why do they keep returning to it? But clearly they were having a regular communication. She's trying to get him to answer the call and come back. He returns to the residence. I'm with the doc on this one, though. That question about what was the discussion between the defendant and her mother and that time period between when this probably occurred and when the 911 was finally called are going to be the real interesting things to see unfold, because it could have been that there was some story building and some staging, or it could have been an incredibly distraught person who was being victimized and saying, what do I do now? I just committed a homicide. Let's dig further into this arrest affidavit and see what police are really saying about the evidence. Again, there's lots of speculation going on the web out there. And you know me, I like to dig into the facts and stick to the facts that are authoritative in nature. First, the chief medical examiner, a guy named Dr. Kenneth Hutchins, determined that the cause of death was a stab wound to the chest, and the manner of death was homicide. Specifically, he found that the victim was stabbed and that the knife punctured the subclavian artery. Now, this is really significant, folks. In his estimation and from the forensic evidence, the knife entered in a downward angle into the body, just into a depth of about 3 inches in. Now, the heart's about 3 inches in. The subclavian artery is a large artery that's located right behind the clavicle, and it goes outward to the arm and down. It's going to be really interesting to see the direction the knife blade was facing. Was the blade facing outward this way, or was it facing this way? And hopefully to hear testimony of whether Clenny was facing Omboselli face to face, or whether she was behind him when the stabbing occurred. Remember, her defense right now is self-defense. The timeline shows that Omboselli left the apartment around 1:15 that afternoon. He had the dogs with him, apparently going for a walk and do some errands. Now, reporting suggests that he was also getting sandwiches during that time for the couple. But there's no indication of where this guy went in that period of time from 1:15 to 4:30 when he got back. But I can tell you that evidence is going to show that he traveled around, and the police definitely have forensics on that. There's no indication, though, of where he was, except evidence shows that Clenny calls him on her cell phone at 4:01 p.m., just a few minutes before she goes live on Instagram to post a video. So my question for you is, what do you think the subject of that call at 4 p.m. was? Now, think about this. This has been 2 3/4 hours since he left. Was Clenny challenging Omboselli for being gone too long? I don't know. Or perhaps she was just confirming a sandwich order, because we know that he returns with sandwiches. Now, I haven't read anything to confirm what was going on, but here's what I suspect. I suspect that law enforcement has Omboselli's cellular phone pings and that they know every step that he made. Here's what we do know for sure, though. Clenny posted a video and then called him again at 4:33, which happens to be about the time he was arriving back at their apartment. Now, remember that my information here is official and it comes from the arrest affidavit, not some public source out there or even a media report. Law enforcement used video and recorded statements, 911 calls, records, data, including cell phone data, to reconstruct the facts of the case. They had April, May, June, July, 4+ months to put this case together before arresting her. It's important to note that their evidence also includes previous phone calls for service, police calls for service to the One Paraíso apartments for domestic violence complaints, including this video that's been online showing the couple's tumultuous relationship. This is captured inside the elevator at the apartments. Well, let's get back to the facts of this case, folks. When Ombaselli returned to the apartment at 4:33, it's unknown what exactly happened. But let's think about a couple of things here. First, he returned with sandwiches. We know this. And we know that moments later, he was stabbed with a knife. It makes me kind of theorize about this initial assault and the fact that it may have happened in the kitchen and that Clenny may have had the knife out to do something normal like cut the sandwich. Regardless, something happens that outrages the couple, one or the other, or maybe both. Either Ombaselli attacks Clenny, like she reports, and that she defended herself, or she attacked him, like previous evidence in the elevator shows she's capable of. But this time, she used a knife. What we don't know right now is what happened immediately after. The arrest affidavit helps us better understand the crime scene, though. The condominium is a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom unit with a private foyer. This is a beautiful place right on Biscayne Bay. The physical crime scene showed droplets of blood by the kitchen island. It's really important. Droplets of blood by the kitchen island dripping to the master bedroom and bathroom and back into the living room. Now, this evidence supports my theory that the assault began in the kitchen, perhaps explaining how that knife originated in Clenny's hands. It appears from the affidavit that Ombaselli staggered into the guest's bedroom, where he either leans against the door jamb or falls to the floor. This is evident by the blood trail through the house, the pool of blood on the floor, and blood transfers on the wall. The evidence appears to be supporting that he was trying to get out of the apartment. That's where his body was discovered, near the front door. Now, again, that subclavian artery is sandwiched between the clavicle, this bone that runs across the front. You can feel it right here if you feel up here, and the first rib. Bleeding can't be stopped very easily when this artery is severed because there's really no place to put pressure and stop the bleeding. According to experts, bleeding will occur and the victim will bleed out in somewhere between 2 and 20 minutes. This is really disturbing because we don't know how long Clenny spoke with her mother on the phone. Police suggest that the murder occurred sometime in that 13 minutes before she made the 911 call. We know that she and her mother had a call at 4:43 and 4:56 before she made that 911 call at 4:57 p.m. This is going to play really heavily into this case. When police arrived, they placed Clenny in handcuffs while firefighters tried to save Ombaselli's life. Police found the murder weapon on the living room floor next to the couch and next to a bloody bedsheet. The affidavit explored the phone calls between Clenny and her mother, and it was confirmed that the stabbing must have occurred after that 4:43 call, because her mother has testified that the stabbing occurred while she was on the phone with Clenny. At the same time Clenny was calling 911, her neighbors were also reporting disturbances in the apartment. Now, during Clenny's 911 call, the affidavit tells us that Omboselli could be heard in the background repeatedly saying he's dying. He can't feel his arm. Clenny, on that same 911 tape, is heard saying, "I'm so sorry, baby." Clenny's mother's testimony is going to be critical in this case, and the investigators recovered text messages from her mom mentioning self-defense are also going to play really heavily into this. Now, during her interview with police, Clenny reportedly provided several inconsistent accounts about what happened that day. Clenny claims she armed herself with a knife in response to being shoved against a wall by the neck and being thrown to the ground. Now, she made it clear to investigators that Omboselli wasn't choking her and that he allowed her to get back up. And I want you to think of that video on the elevator again for a moment. Now, more important to me than her comments were the physical observations made by investigating officers. The affidavit indicates that there were no injuries to Clenny that corroborated her account of an attack. At no time did Clenny claim Omboselli was armed with any type of weapon either. At first, Clenny claimed she threw the knife at Omboselli from more than 10 feet away, but forensics have proven that that wasn't likely. Now, in addition to physical evidence, Clenny made admissions, not confessions, but admissions. Things like, quote, "I don't think that this was, I don't know, I really don't know if this was justified at all," close quote. I'll leave that for you to decide. One thing that everyone agrees on, though, is that the couple was in a toxic relationship for more than 2 years, and the violence continued to escalate right up until April 3rd, when Clenny acted without justification and caused the death of Omboselli by stabbing him, demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. And the judge apparently agreed, because he signed the arrest warrant that stands today. Now, once Clenny is extradited to Florida, the next round of court hearings will begin. This case is a tragedy that highlights the horrors of domestic violence and domestic violence homicide. These relationships don't get any better on their own, folks, without some kind of real intervention. Now, I hope that this hasn't triggered any difficult thoughts for you. If you or someone you know is involved in a toxic domestic violence situation, please reach out to your medical or your mental health provider immediately and get help. Now, I'm going to be looking for your comments down below on this one, and I want to encourage you to please also sign up for our Academy level that's starting in just a couple weeks. Our channel memberships are a great way to support us financially, and we really appreciate it. Again, we'll be starting that second series in a couple of weeks, and we'll be exploring all kinds of criminal behavior, just like the case we've been talking about today. Hey, if you guys like special content, please let me know. Invite your friends to join our channel memberships and to subscribe. Hit that like and subscribe button. And please share Profiling Evil with your friends. Remember that you can find Profiling Evil on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you like podcasts, go to Profiling Evil on your favorite podcast platform. And please check us out on the World Wide Web at profilingevil.com. And there, sign up for our free digital newsletter, the B.O.L.O. B.O.L.O stands for Be on the Lookout. Hey, thanks again, and we'll see you all soon at the next crime scene.